At first you might be thinking, is this a story about a war that occurred over land or an area in which chimpanzees lived? Or maybe even a dispute between activists protecting the land and people wanting to use it? Well, that is not what this story is about. It is more complicated than that. In recent years, researchers have learnt a lot about these incredible creatures. One thing that has come to light is that chimps will actively hunt down their enemies. After taking their lives, researchers were shocked to learn that the chimps will even eat their enemy. One such story was told by researchers who were following a group of rivals. They noted that one family purposely staged an attack on the nearby enemies. Once they were finished with the attack, the group carried a baby chimpanzee back to their territory and went on to eat it for a meal. So today we'll be taking a look at a community of chimps and their behavior. The Gom Chimpanzees War. So what is or was the Gom Chimpanzee War? First off, we should discuss what the war actually was. Between January the 7th, 1974, and June 5th, 1978, two groups of chimpanzees in the Gom Stream National Park waged a terrifying and violent war on each other. The two groups of chimpanzees were once part of one unified group, until 6 adult male chimpanzees along with 3 adult female chimpanzees and their young branched off from the original group and formed a new chimpanzee community separate from the original. The original group, known as the Kamaha community, was now left with just 19 adult chimpanzees in total, 7 males and 12 females along with their young. It is important to note before getting into the conflict that there were only minor signs of the chimpanzees' aggressive behavior in relation to the territory. Before this 4-year-long war began, there were disputes over food and where chimpanzees would eat, but there was nothing to prepare the researchers for what would happen over those 4 years. The beginning of the war. On January 7, 1974, at the Gom Stream National Park in Tanzania, the Gom Chimpanzee War began with the first casualty. The group that initially splintered off from the original community were known as the Kasakaila community. Led by the 6 adult males, Humphrey, Jomeo, Fagin, Everett, Rodolph, and Sherry, but was commanded by Fagin, the alpha male who drew first blood. Godi, one of the adult males that stayed with the original group, was feeding alone on a tree when all 6 of the aforementioned adult males pounced, brutally taking out Godi. When this attack happened, this was the first time any of the chimpanzees had purposely taken out another fellow male. After celebrating their victory, the 6 males went on to kill Hugh, who led the original group along with Charlie and Dee, 2 of the other male chimpanzees. After the ambush with just 4 remaining adult males in the original Kamaha community, Goliath, an elderly chimpanzee who had tried to be kind to the Kasekala community in previous encounters that did not involve bloodshed, was then killed when the Kasekala group did not share the same kindness. Now the Kamaha community had just lost over half its adult males, with just 3 now remaining. Charlie, now the sole leader, Sniff, and Willy Wally. Unfortunately, Willy Wally had been crippled from polio, so he was unable to defend himself or his community. In rapid succession, without giving the Kamaha group any time to fight back or plan their own attack, the Kasekala chimpanzees hit again, this time killing the leader Charlie. Once Charlie was taken out, Willy Wally disappeared and was never found, whereas Sniff, the youngest male, managed to survive by himself for over a year. Researchers had thought that Sniff would be able to be accepted into the Kasekala community or that he had managed to escape the war into a new group, but this was not the case. Around a year after Charlie was killed, Sniff too was also killed by the Kasekala males. The adult males were not the only casualties of the Kasekala's attacks. 2 of them went missing and were never found. 3 of them had been kidnapped into the Kasakaila community and 1 was killed. The Kasakaila males had managed to take out almost all of the Kamaha males, with Willy Wally's fate unknown. They had also successfully taken over the Kamaha territory and had won the war, or so it seemed. Battles were won, but wars were lost. The new territory that the Kasakaila community had gained would not be theirs for long. The previous Kamaha territory was direct neighbors with another chimpanzee community, the Kaland. The Kaland community greatly outnumbered the Kasakaila community and were far superior in general strength. The new border between the two communities was now the location for violent outbursts between the males, and very quickly, The Kasakala group decided to move back towards their original territory, and in the process, the Kalan community took much of the Kasakala's newly acquired territory. The Kasakila community were then constantly in minor skirmishes with Matumba foragers. The Matumba foragers had larger numbers compared to Kasakila, and as a result, over time the war died down, and eventually a common order was restored at Gom National Park. Aftermath and reaction. Jane Goodall was a lead researcher at the time of the war, and she spent 30 years studying the chimpanzees of the Gom National Park. When the war broke out, it was not expected at the time. No one ever thought something like this could or would happen, especially Jane Goodall. Jane was shocked and disturbed at the whole thing and had spent her time researching up until that point with the notion that chimpanzees were rather nice when comparing them to humans. The events that occurred and the Gom chimpanzee war itself was so unheard of at the time that when Jane Goodall was reporting on the events that were happening in Gom National Park, other researchers did not believe her. A naturally occurring war between chimpanzees was never believed to be a thing that could happen, yet it did. Jane was then accused of inadvertently causing the war through her feeding research, and some scientists at the time were completely adamant that this could not happen. It was not possible. Almost 50 years later, in 2018, there was a study that was published looking into the Gom chimpanzee war, and the study had concluded that the war was probably caused by the power struggle between the three top chimpanzees, Hugh, Charlie, and Fagin, which was then made worse by the exceptionally low number of fertile female chimpanzees in the community. And that concludes the story of the Gom chimpanzee war. Scientists discover Zealandia. You would think it unlikely that there would be a hidden continent. But it just so happens that is exactly what scientists exploring the South Pacific have uncovered. In the 1990s, a team of 32 scientists from over 12 different countries found Zealandia in all its glory. Zealandia lies beneath the surface of the murky seas, thought to have been submerged over 80 million years ago. This secret continent is partially raised up on the ocean bed and appears to be roughly two-thirds the size and length of Australia, or about the size of India. Zealandia is located midway between New Caledonia and New Zealand, from which it gets its name. Several scientists have come out since its initial discovery with the argument that it ought to be officially recognized as one of Earth's continents. A more recent examination done by the team of scientists who discovered it in the first place back in the 1990s reveals that the continent was on the ocean's surface more recently than originally thought. The IODP, short for International Ocean Discovery Program, and the A&M University of Texas, teamed up in their investigations of the submerged continent and found that its land levels made it possible for plant life and animals to cross between continents. And that was why it took us so long to find out about its very existence. However, new evidence attests it is not as lowly immersed as we believed, though it is still at least over a kilometer or two-thirds of a mile below surface level, making it extremely challenging to investigate properly, and thus surveys of it have been scarce. As recently as 2017, researchers managed to go on an expedition with sufficient equipment drilling into Zealandia's seabed at 6 different sites. The water depth drilled more than 1,250 meters, or 4,000 feet deep. The expedition was fruitful, with 8,000 feet worth of sediment getting collected for analysis. These samples, when analyzed, can reveal a plethora of valuable information: volcanism, climate, when the region had its time above the surface, how the land changed through the millennia. Countless wonderful results could be found out. Gerald Dickens, the co-chief scientist at the Texan Rice University in Houston, explained that alongside sediment samples they found many fossils. He commented upon the matter. More than 8,000 specimens were studied and several hundred fossil species were identified. Once the analyses returned from the sediments and fossil samples, it was revealed that the environment of Zealandia was shockingly unconventional to what researchers. The spores and pollen taken from land plants and shells of various shallow sea organisms showed that the Ring of Fire, a circular formation in the Pacific Ocean where volcanic eruptions and earthquakes are a constant threat, had much to do with the continent's doomed sinkage. The Ring of Fire, over millions of years, caused drastic changes in the ocean's depth, which led to it overwhelming the poor continent and eventually consuming it. Rupert Sutherland, an expedition scientist at Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand, has stated that those working on the project believe Zealandia sank beneath the waves after its separation from both Australia and Antarctica back when the continents were still forming. This grand discovery can help give us much-needed insight into what life was like in the South Pacific millions of years ago, particularly how plants and animals evolved, and furthermore can assist us in understanding the way our tectonic plates move. Perhaps scientists may even be able to use the Landier to produce accurate simulations of how the Earth's climate changes through the coming years. Mountain madness found to be a real psychosis. Imagine you are a lone mountaineer and suddenly you hear a voice and someone begins to follow you. This is far from abnormal and is in fact a terrifying reality for many climbers. Although hallucinations have always been common with high altitudes, the phenomenon was initially thought to be a form of altitude sickness. These climbing-based psychotic episodes known as mountain madness are now considered to be a very real form of psychosis. It is extremely common for climbers to lose touch with reality, seeing movement where there is none and hearing human voices and music in silence. These visual and auditory symptoms are prevalent for mountaineers at high altitudes. The other phenomenon that these people often experience is a somesthetic illusion called the third man factor, where they believe they are climbing with someone else. The study of this phenomenon is continuing by emergency medicine doctors from URAC Research and the Medical University of Innsbruck. Findings have confirmed that the symptoms are unrelated to typical ailments that come from high altitudes but are entirely psychotic. This mountain madness is now formally known as isolated high-altitude psychosis. In reaching this conclusion, researchers analyzed 83 psychotic episodes found in German mountaineer literature. The first-hand findings of one of the researchers when climbing Everest also contributed to the findings. When Dr. Jeremy Windsor climbed Everest in 2008, at an altitude of over 5.1 miles, Dr. Windsor was met by a man named Jimmy. Jimmy climbed side by side with Dr. Windsor, providing words of encouragement and support. The two spoke all day while they continued their climb when suddenly Jimmy vanished without a trace. It is now known that Dr. Windsor hallucinated Jimmy as a symptom of isolated high-altitude psychosis. Most often, these symptoms start to appear when climbers reach over 23,000 feet above sea level. The only cure for these symptoms is to descend the mountain. There have been no lasting effects of this form of psychosis, and people return to their normal state immediately once they reach a lower altitude. Scientists suspect that this psychosis is due to reduced oxygen levels in the brain, stress, isolation, or a combination of these, but unfortunately the cause behind these symptoms remains unconfirmed. There is no evidence of the frequency of these symptoms or if certain people are more susceptible to isolated high-altitude psychosis than others. Researchers hope to uncover more about this mountain madness because of the dangerous nature of hallucinations and psychosis while navigating treacherous terrains. Darvaza gas crater in Turkmenistan, also known as Turkmenia, a gas crater has been on fire since the 70s. This sovereign country is east of the Caspian Sea and is one of the most sparsely populated countries in Asia, with only 6 million inhabitants. Its cities were some of the most important stumps along the Silk Road and are considered the oldest oasis cities in Central Asia. It has the fourth largest natural gas reserve, which actually contributed to the Darvaza gas crater. In 1971, Soviet geologists and engineers set up drilling rigs in the middle of the Karakum Desert. They believed the location was a profitable oil field, but instead found a natural gas pocket underneath the drill site. Soon after they conducted their initial assessment, the ground collapsed, burying the rigging equipment and creating a large crater. Fortunately, no one was harmed during this accident. The crater covers 5,350 square meters, reaches a depth of 30 meters, and features continuously burning hot spots and orange flames. The fire and its longevity led the villagers of Darvaza to refer to it as the door to hell or the gates of hell. Once the ground collapsed, the Soviet researchers feared that the crater would spread dangerous methane gas and reach neighboring villages and towns. They decided to set the gas on fire to burn it all up, estimating that it would burn for only a few weeks and then die out. It has now been 50 years and scientists believe it will continue burning for much longer. The natural gas comes from a large gas pocket deep within the surface, which allows for a slow accumulation of fuel and protects the gas flow from the wind. The Turkmenistan government has been indecisive over its opinion on the crater. In 2010, the president ordered that the crater be closed to reduce its influence on the other natural gas fields nearby. The country wanted to increase its production and export of natural gas, so they feared the crater would impede their potential revenue. Then, in 2013, the president declared it a protected nature reserve. It seems the government now plans to use it as an attraction to promote tourism. Regardless, the crater will continue to burn and entice visitors to come and see the gates. But what do you make of these discoveries that have been unearthed? The United States Space Force made headlines on the 20th of December 2019, although officials note that there were talks going on way before this. On the 18th of June 2018, the former president of the United States revealed that plans were being put into place to begin a space force. This military service would be operating in space and everything that revolves around space. This is the first of its kind, and it got many people asking questions. One being, why do we need a space force? If there's no threat beyond Earth, why is this necessary? The United States Space Force said the following on their website. The United States Space Force is a separate and distinct branch of the armed services, organized under the Department of the Air Force, in a manner very similar to how the Marine Corps organized under the Department of the Navy. End quote. The Space Force's Vice Chief of Space Operations, General David Thompson, has just said that China is moving at twice the rate of the United States in regards to developing capabilities in space, something that he notes has been raised multiple times. General David Thompson said the following during the Reagan National Defense Forum on the 5th of December 2021. The fact that, in essence, on average, they're building and fielding and updating their space capabilities at twice the rate we are, means that very soon, if we don't start accelerating our development and delivery capabilities, they will exceed us. 2030 is not an unreasonable estimate of when China could surpass the US in space capabilities. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was also very vocal about how quickly China was developing their space fleet, and warned that at this moment in time China and the United States were in direct competition with each other. Going on to say the following. We've seen 2 decades of breakneck modernization by the People's Liberation Army, and China's military is on pace to become a peer competitor to the United States in Asia, and eventually around the world. End quote. He said that hopefully this doesn't spill over and mean that there's going to be another conflict, but did note that China has been for the last few years a growing economic powerhouse, and that the United States needs to step up its game if it wants to stay ahead. Other officials also warn that China is everywhere at the moment and that they're trying to become a global powerhouse, noting that not only have their nuclear arsenal grown massively in the last few years, but their scientists and researchers are making rapid advancements in outer space and cyberspace, with one U.S. official saying that the United States cybersecurity is nothing compared to China's. Nicholas Chalin, who at the time served as Chief Software Officer for the U.S. government and Air Force, revealed on social media that he was stepping down from his position, and said that the United States has no competing fighting chance against China in 15 to 20 years. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin carried on with the following. Now we always assess not just capabilities, but also intentions and actions. The leaders of the Chinese Communist Party have been increasingly vocal about their dissatisfaction with the prevailing order and about their aim of displacing America from its global leadership role. They have been seen misusing technology to advance its repressive agenda at home and exporting the tools of autocracy abroad. Global defense experts have also been vocal about how much Russia and China are expanding their military, with one expert saying that they've never seen this type of expansion before and that it should be a worry for U.S. officials. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin did say, though, that the worst outcome here is conflict and that this has to be avoided, otherwise millions of people could lose their lives. He said the following, "We seek neither confrontation nor conflict, and as President Biden has repeatedly made clear, we are not seeking a new Cold War or a divided world. So yes, we are facing a formidable challenge. But America isn't a country that fears competition. And we're going to meet this one with confidence and resolve, not panic and pessimism. At this moment in time, the U.S.'s approach would be one of deterrence and to prevent conflict and to establish common-sense guardrails. We will always stand ready to prevail in conflict. But America's defense will always be rooted in our resolve to prevent conflict. So we are actively seeking open lines of communication with China's defense leaders, especially in a crisis, and both our diplomats and our militaries. We are taking steps to reduce risk and to prevent miscalculations. End quote. China's current president hasn't been quiet during all of this, saying that China has global ambitions, and is even predicted that by the year 2049, China will be able to fight, win, and take over the United States with ease. President Joe Biden said the following in regards to this message. China is the only country capable of combining its economic, diplomatic, military, and technological power to mount a sustained challenge to a stable and open international system. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said, though, that the United States will always be a powerhouse. And this comes down to the U.S.'s connections, saying that the United States has a commitment to countries such as the United Kingdom and Australia. He continued with the following, "We are building on a lesson that I learned over 4 decades in uniform. In war and in peace, we are always stronger when we work together with our friends." End quote. Those on the panel said that these things need to be highlighted, and that it sends a message home to the United States that they may not be as advanced as they think they are. Nicholas Trillian, who was the chief software officer for the U.S. government and Air Force, ended by saying the following, "It's already a done deal. It's already over in my opinion." With one article detailing the following, China was set to dominate the future of the world, controlling everything from media narratives to geopolitics. This criticism comes after U.S. departments were included in a cyber attack, with those working within the department saying that hackers were trying to get hold of sensitive information, saying that they also attacked UK officials as well. It's suspected that the hackers in question were Russians. So what do you make of this recent announcement? And do you think that China's president predicting that by the year 2049, China will be able to fight to win and take over the United States with ease is something we should worry about? Over 50 earthquakes have hit Yellowstone National Park in the last week, with park officials noting that one of those was the biggest of the year. It was a 3.3 magnitude earthquake, and interestingly, this is happening very close to where the uplift has been detected. These earthquake clusters have been hitting Yellowstone hard in the last few years, with a team of researchers noting that recent activity has been hitting the park deep underneath Yellowstone Lake. The United States Geological Survey said that they're still learning new things about Yellowstone National Park, noting that one of the most recent discoveries was that of a thermal feature that was not in the database. The USGS said the following on their website. Earlier this year, an issue of Yellowstone Caldera Chronicle was reported on the discovery of an emerging thermal error within Yellowstone National Park. The area was identified in thermal infrared satellite imagery as a region of warm ground that was not in the park's database of known thermal features. It's located along the northeast boundary of the Sour Creek Dome, near Western Lake, and it appears to be an expansion of the previously known Tern Lake thermal area. A review of archived aerial photos taken by the Department of Agriculture revealed that the thermal area was a hillside of healthy trees in the 1990s. We do not know its birthday, but satellite images acquired in the summer of 2001 showed the first evidence of trees beginning to die. By 2006, there was an incredibly large zone of dead or dying trees and a measurable thermal anomaly at the surface. By 2009, the ground had the white chalky color that is typical of many other thermal areas in Yellowstone. End quote. The National Park Service continued with the following. The park's hydrothermal system is the visible expression of the immense Yellowstone volcano. It would not exist without the underlying partially molten magma body that releases tremendous heat. The system also requires water, such as groundwater from the mountains surrounding the Yellowstone Plateau. Dr. Mike Poland, the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory scientist in charge, said the following, "This is a new thermal area that's really still developing. You can see places where the trees have fallen, and the underside of the tree that was facing the ground was sort of scorched. It was pretty. I felt an excitement, but also kind of a wonder that here we are at this new place that really has not been described, at least by people on the ground. You do have a sense of, well, this is new, and you wonder what some of the early explorers or Native Americans must have thought when they saw these places for the first time. End quote. USGS researchers said it's interesting that we're still learning new things about Yellowstone. Another thing that's been featured on the news a lot is that of the earthquake swarms that's been hitting Yellowstone. These swarms have been of particular interest to researchers, with United States Geological Survey researchers saying that back in 2008 and 2009, Yellowstone saw some of its biggest earthquake swarms, noting that they were larger than the standard tremors. According to Jamie Farrell, an assistant research professor with the University of Utah's seismograph stations and chief seismologist of the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, the swarms and their locations are of particular interest and something that needs to be studied more in depth. He said the following, however, one interesting aspect of this swarm is that it's occurring directly on the boundary of the Yellowstone caldera, a fault which formed due to collapse of the surface during the most recent large explosive eruption 631,000 years ago. Could this one be a reactivation of that boundary fault? Only further research will be able to address that question. But swarms on caldera-bounding faults are relatively common. End quote. The September swarm back in 2020 was also of interest, but researchers noted that there were more swarms this year. Professor Farrell said the following about last year's earthquakes. At this point, it doesn't look like the current swarm beneath Yellowstone Lake will approach the size of some of the larger swarms that have occurred in past years. But one never knows how things are going to go, especially when it comes to earthquakes. We will continue to keep an eye on this swarm and see how it progresses. You can follow along by checking the University of Utah's seismograph station's website. One such thing is for certain. Yellowstone will continue to have earthquake storms like this in the future. They are as much as a part of life of Yellowstone as the geysers and hot springs. And they're all a manifestation of the incredibly dynamic nature of the region. End quote. Scientists have reassured people, though, that Yellowstone is not going to erupt anytime soon, saying that they have trackers across the entire park and are constantly watching the data for any big changes. They've said they would potentially have a week's notice before anything big was going to happen, and said that they've seen nothing from their data that would suggest anything big is going to happen in the near future. Researchers have said that if Yellowstone was going to erupt, it would have massive consequences. Teams of scientists have found that after the eruption of a supervolcano, it's often been recorded that there tends to be a massive cooling event that occurs around the world. This is due to the fact that the ejection of a large amount of volcanic ash causes a global darkness event, preventing the planet from warming up and causing a global ice age. Given these calculations, it's expected that if the Yellowstone supervolcano were to erupt in the modern day, the amount of ash spewed would travel through the atmosphere and block out the sun from all around the world, leading to a modern-day ice age that would prevent the sun from being seen for 6 to 7 years, creating a seemingly endless darkness for all life on Earth and record low temperatures never before recorded. So what do you make of these interesting discoveries? And what do you make of the thermal area that went undetected by scientists? Researchers have said that Homo sapiens have first appeared around 200,000 years ago, but notes that out of those 200,000 years, only 195,500 have been documented, meaning that roughly 97% of our history has been lost and is undocumented. Many events have happened in this time, and there's likely dozens of civilizations that have come and gone since then. Due to no evidence being left behind, we will never know about these civilizations and the impact that they had on our ancestors. Some researchers have said that some of these civilizations left behind symbols, drawings, and markings, and that this can be used to help us better understand what they were doing during this time. Some archaeologists, though, have discovered things that don't quite fit into our known history, and one of these is a strange drawing that was discovered in a cave in Japan. British Exploring Society was one of the first social media accounts to share this, with them asking their followers what they made of it. Since then, various social media accounts have gone on to share it, leading many to point out the obvious that this drawing looks like it's depicting an advanced aircraft. Drawings similar to this have been found all across the world, including places like ancient Egypt, where some have said this odd that different civilizations. One of the issues with these types of discoveries is that they're usually isolated, with those who found them saying that nothing else was close by. This makes it hard to track down what time period the drawing was made in, and what the individual was trying to depict. Regardless, there's groups of people that think these drawings are depicting mysterious flying aircrafts, with believers saying that it doesn't match anything else during those time periods, saying that planes and other aerial crafts weren't around during these times. Oddly enough, pretty much all cultures detail these strange objects, from the ancient Egyptians, Indians, and the Mayans, with ancient Indians calling these objects remains, and interestingly, many of these strange-looking objects can be seen in ancient paintings and carvings. Japan is no stranger to mysterious crafts, and one of their most well-known stories involving a strange craft is according to the limited information that's been provided about the event. What Sorobun refers to an incident in 1803, when an attractive young woman arrived on the coast of Japan, and she was inside an unusual, technologically advanced boat. The local fishermen tried to investigate what was going on, but couldn't communicate with her as she was talking another language. Not knowing what to do with her, they took her back to the sea and let her go in her boat. According to some local legends, the woman was someone from a distant land, noting that something was different about her. Some legends also tell of a mysterious box that the woman held in her hands. The story gives 3 different historical references about the legend. All 3 references are from the early 1800s, and they give different but somewhat similar accounts of the incident. The story also mentions a number of investigations, and all of the investigations drift towards different results. One of the most recent investigations was conducted by Dr. Kazutanaka from Gifu University in Tokyo. According to him, the legends about Osuribuno don't give any details about the movement of the bones, but did note that it hovered motionless on the water. Another strange discovery was made by Dr. Bhagat and his team, with them saying that while exploring an ancient cave system in India, they found something that resembled an alien and suggested that the cave painting could be over 10,000 years old. He even went on to say that he liked NASA and the Indian Space Research Organization's opinion on the discovery. Some theorists have suggested that going back thousands of years ago, advanced ancient civilizations flourished. And not only this, but also that they left behind evidence. For example, some point to the ancient stone figure found in the middle of a number of ancient mine ruins down in Guatemala. These feature an almost perfect recreation of a modern-day astronaut carved in stone. This stone figure has been at the center of many ancient civilization debates, and some claim that the gods were depicted in such a way due to the fact that there were many advanced creatures visiting from faraway planets. Paintings can also be found in a cave close to central India. What's interesting is that when first viewing the paintings, there are many that show humans and animals. However, it also stunned researchers because it showed kangaroos and giraffes, which are not native to India. However, it was this drawing that stood out. Dr. Burgat said the following about the discovery. The findings suggest that humans in prehistoric times may have seen or imaged beings from other planets, which still creates curiosity among people and researchers. In a few pictures, they even shown wearing spacesuits. It's not the first time we've found cave paintings like this, but never until now with such detail. Flying saucers, equipment, spacesuits, depictions of abduction are some of the images one can find in this region. This has led amateur researchers to question why mainstream scientists haven't investigated this further, saying that there's a huge chunk of history missing from our books, and these discoveries could help to give us an insight into our past. Mainstream researchers, though, have brushed off these depictions as being nothing more than drawings, and have said that they have no historical value. So what do you make these interesting discoveries? And what do you think they depict? Despite the amazing technological advances of recent years, the Earth is constantly offering up new mysteries that leave scientists scrambling for answers as they attempt to make sense of this planet we call home. From the isolated Russian tundra to the remote South Pole, new mysteries are constantly revealing themselves as new discoveries are made. So today we will be looking at 3 interesting discoveries. Archaeologists find a vast network of Amazon villages laid out like the cosmos. This jungle discovery was the result of a new archaeological project that focused on learning more about the pre-Columbian Amazon. Over the last 20 years, research has uncovered that the southern rim of the rainforest was home to a culture of soil sculptors that were able to engineer entire landscapes around their villages long before the Europeans arrived with such knowledge. It is only in the last 10 years that scientists have been able to find remnants of these complex designs, called mound villages, which are shaped as rectangles or circles and connected by intricate networks of roads. While these mound villages have been found and documented in other parts of the country, archaeologists had never sought them out in the Brazilian state of Acre. This prompted an international group of researchers to join forces and perform a complete survey of the area using LiDAR technology. Before this technology, researchers would have needed to rely on deforestation or hacking their way through the rainforest to reveal any ancient secrets. But with LiDAR, billions of pulse lasers are shot toward a designated section of land from a helicopter only to bounce back toward the sensor, providing the precise measurements needed to recreate 3D maps and models of the area. The resulting data from their flight over Acre revealed 36 of these mound villages, 25 circular and 11 rectangular, dating from the 1300s to the 1700s. The circular villages each had similar layouts featuring elongated mounds circling the plaza at the center of the city, making them resemble the face of a clock. From above, the mounds circling the villages looked like the rays of the sun. Each village was about 3 miles apart but connected to one another, creating a vast network through the rainforest. Archaeologists speculate that these cultures may have been inspired by the stars when they created their communities. The village networks are designed in such a consistent and distinctive way that researchers believe they were arranged in a pattern that reflects the Native Americans' understanding of the cosmos. Ancient Egyptians used meteorites as jewelry. A more cultural piece of research shows that from 3300 BC onwards, Egyptian jewelry-making practices have used meteorite iron. In 1911, a series of iron beads on strings were found when the Gezer Cemetery underwent excavation. Named the Gezer bead, this is believed to be the earliest use of iron from ancient Egyptian society that we are yet to discover, with these beaded necklaces being dated between 3500 and 3600 BC, despite this being centuries prior to the Egyptian Iron Age. Initial assumptions were quick to label the necklace beads to be formed from meteorite iron, a claim supported by the nickel-rich iron composition, though this notion was not long established before it underwent criticism. In the 1980s, researchers expanded the possibilities that they may have accounted for this, considering that these iron creations were early efforts to smelt iron, not iron derived from a meteorite. A broad regional range of research has collaborated throughout Britain, from the Natural History Museum located in London to the Open University based in Milton Keynes to the University of Manchester. The research undertaken by the British team included the use of both an electron microscope and a CT scanner to confirm if the composition aligned with expectations. Then this procedure can be seen as having confirmed the iron is indeed that of a meteorite. Professor Philip Withers from the University of Manchester described meteorites as having a unique microstructural and chemical fingerprint, meaning that identifying said fingerprint in Egyptian artifacts is strong evidence for meteorites having been used. This study concluded just that. This fingerprint within the 5,300-year-old Gezer beads is a result of the meteorite having been used, distinctive due to a meteorite's slow travel through space impacting its composition. Not only does this research provide important information into the makeup and tracing of meteorites, but it also allows us to see how modern equipment and technology can accelerate and improve the accuracy of these identification processes. Perhaps most importantly, we can understand the role of these materials in different societies. Dr. Diane Johnson, affiliated with the Open University Center for Earth, Planetary, Space, and Astronomical Research states, meteorite iron had profound implications for the ancient Egyptians, both in their perception of the iron in the context of its celestial origin and in early metallurgy attempts. This idea was supported by statements made by Dr. Joyce Tilsley from the University of Manchester, who suggested that whilst our modern society views iron as practical but dull, it was a rare and beautiful material to ancient Egyptians. Apparently, due to meteorites having fallen from the sky, Iron was believed to have been magical or religious in its nature. There is lots to learn surrounding the practices of ancient societies, and the use of iron in ancient Egypt suggests skills and understanding centuries ahead of its time. A massive detached coral reef has been discovered in Australia's Great Barrier Reef, measuring 1,640 feet in height. In October of 2020, a large coral reef was unexpectedly discovered north of the Great Barrier Reef. This new reef reaches 500 meters, half a kilometer or 1,640 feet in height, making it taller than the Empire State Building, reminding us just how little we know of our oceans. A team of scientists were creating a 3D mapping of the seafloor in the area surrounding Australia's Great Barrier Reef. This mission was predicted to take a year. The team conducted their mission from aboard a research vessel owned by Californian nonprofit group the Schmidt Ocean Institute. From here, they were able to use an underwater robot called Sebastian to move around the reef, giving them the ability to form their 3D map. The discovery was shared via a YouTube livestream captured by Sebastian. Executive Director of Schmidt Ocean Institute, Dr. Jyotika Vermani, stated that the discovery shows how serious the world is beyond our coastline. Scientists are hopeful that the data gained from mapping and the underwater imagery collected by Sebastian will contribute nicely to developing our understanding of the newly found reef, as well as how it works in the bigger picture of the Great Barrier Reef. World Heritage Area. It is no secret that within the last few decades the Great Barrier Reef has been suffering, and this is said to be because of warmer seas and the climate crisis as a whole. This has resulted in the loss of coral life, led to great amounts of other marine life moving, and has increased the rate of growth for algae as well as other possible contaminants. Despite this decline in health of the Great Barrier Reef, it remains of vital importance, home to 1,500 species of fish, 411 hard corals, and many other animals and marine life alike. In 1981, the Great Barrier Reef became a World Heritage Site, demonstrating its scientific importance. Yet, since 1995, more than half of the corals have been lost due to increased temperature in the sea. This decline in the well-being of the Great Barrier Reef makes the discovery of the new reef all the more exciting, with it being the first to have been stumbled across since the 1800s. The outskirts of the Great Barrier Reef are also known to be home to 7 other tall reefs, the most notable of which is close to Rain Island, which contains the globe's most important nesting area for green sea turtles. The newly discovered reef is not contained within the main portion of the Great Barrier Reef, meaning it has been classified as a distinct and separate reef. However, it is attached and bedded into the ocean floor by North Queensland. We have also found that the new reef is home to new organisms related to jellyfish and coral, siphonophores, and other deep-sea organisms, with many being bioluminescent. Over the year-long mission, 30 new species have been discovered, proving this research to have been worthwhile and valuable. Whether it is the internet stumbling across an unacknowledged endangered species, physicists finding the answers behind strange astronomical events, or uncovering new areas of our oceans, we are learning more about our world with each passing day and have plenty more discoveries around the core. But what do you make of these discoveries that we have found on our Earth? There are mysteries all around us, and we are fascinated by what we cannot understand. Groundbreaking finds are discovered every day, keeping our curiosity piqued and the prospect of actually knowing the world around us a foreign concept. Who were our ancestors? How did they live? Where are society and our world headed towards today? Every day it is possible to find something new and exciting, big or small, in your own back garden, or in the most extreme places on Earth. Some take us to different planets and tell us about the cosmos. Some tell us about our history and inform us on who we are now. All of them leave us eager to learn more. So today we will be discussing some topics closer to home as we delve into the world of the Catholic Church, exploring its history, present-day advancements, and we will be analyzing the merit of some of their current philosophies. Church members make chilling discovery. In 2014, post-tropical storm Arthur, which first hit the U.S. from North Carolina, uprooted a surprising discovery to say the least. members of a St. John church arrived at the church grounds only to discover human remains, which were uncovered after the storm hurtled through the region, ripping through all in its way. Strong, gusty winds and heavy rainfall had caused a large tree to topple over, leaving the congregation shocked to find bone twined in the tree's remaining root structure. Parishioner Rosemary Bowes recounted that it was a whole skeleton embedded in the roots and further commented on her surprise at how well the bones had been preserved. It appeared as though the roots of the tree had grown such that they had actually supported the bones and kept them in their original positions from the time that they were buried there. Police later confirmed that the find was indeed of human bones, but also that it was not the first time that human remains had been found in the area. Previous natural events causing soil disturbances in the local area have also led to calls reporting the history of human remains they revealed, and that these are often found to be extremely old when properly collected and analyzed. The bones found in the wake of Storm Arthur were then sent off to a forensic unit to be tested at the St. John Regional Hospital morgue. No more has since been reported on the subject, but early speculation from police and the coroner was that they were simply old bones from burials on the church property. Pope Francis says consumers today are too greedy. As thousands herded together to attend the Pope's Christmas Mass of 2018, marking the 6th Christmas of his papacy, the Pope warned his audience, St. Peter's Basilica, that an insatiable greed marks all human history and that too many struggle to survive on the bare minimum while a handful dine luxuriously at their expense. He went on to recount how Jesus himself had only been born in a stable, with no luxury, just poverty, and therefore suggested we take some time at Christmas while remembering Christ's birth to also reflect on the real meaning of life. He delivered his message about excessive consumerist habits, urging us to lessen our materialistic ways to the almost 10,000 pilgrims who had traveled from across the world to gather in Bethlehem ahead of Christmas Eve. It was a symbolic message from a renowned figure, topped off by being in such a religiously loaded location, and reminds us of our duties to one another to treat others as we wish to be treated ourselves. By being too greedy and money-driven, the Pope urged those listening to his Mass to focus on happiness from ourselves rather than just capitalistic materialistic goods. Today, in 2021, we thought it fitting to reflect upon whether the Pope was correct in his to rectify the path our society is headed in. Beyond the greed and gluttony the Pope spoke of, while the Vatican and Rome more generally saw increased security, his message also spoke of how new extremist groups spring up and target churches, places of worship, ministers and members of the faithful, aligned with how other Christian leaders worldwide were marking Christmas as a happier time after so much violence against fellow worshippers. It is becoming clear that defending the poor has become a hallmark of the Pope's papacy, as the Vatican also announced that they had given Rome a new homeless clinic where they could receive free medical care as a gift. With over 16,000 homeless in Rome and with many increasingly congregating near the Vatican, the Pope's pleas to us to think about others and to live simpler lives makes complete sense. Of a tumultuous year, and as the Pope reminded us of our humanity and gentler, kinder sides, the same message in some ways could benefit us this coming Christmas. Pope changes law so women are allowed to perform tasks in Mass. Only less than a year ago in January 2021, the Pope made the move to officially allow women to perform tasks in Mass in the Catholic Church, but stressed that the move was not in any way suggestive that they would be allowed to become priests. The new law outlines women's newfound legal right to be able to be altar servers during liturgies. While this has actually been commonplace for several years in developing countries, the change in canon law means that bishops will no longer be able to stop from taking on these roles. The Pope later elaborated in a letter revealing that the change came about after reflection from himself and some bishops, who felt that the amendment was needed in order to keep up with the changing times. When we consider the struggles women went through to get the vote almost a century ago, and for growing efforts to decrease gender inequality in today's society, this may seem a somewhat insignificant and underwhelming breakthrough for the Catholic Church. However, at least the Church is recognizing that Catholic practices across the world need to take steps to be more inclusive in line with today's lack of tolerance for gender discrimination. Kate McElvey, the executive director of Women's Ordination Conference, adds that she hopes we will be seeing more women involved in the liturgy as now. even if their becoming priests is still an entirely taboo topic. Campaigners have long been calling for the Vatican to permit women to be ordained and become, especially as they have been struggling with a shortage for decades now in Europe and North America, and yet could solve this problem so simply by allowing women into the higher ranks of the Catholic Church. This said, Pope Francis has been fairly effective during his papacy in appointing women into senior roles within the Vatican, hiring 6 women last August to oversee the Vatican's finances in a previously all-male council. It is clear that the Pope and the Catholic Church are together making attempts to be more gender-inclusive in their functioning. However, women's roles still seem secondary and complementary to the men's positions of power, rather than being trusted to represent the Church in positions such as priests. For now, we will hope that these small gestures build momentum and that women's rights in the Church continue to grow. From announcements about our world today to discoveries and mysteries that await us, there is so much more to learn and understand about all aspects of life, past and present in countries worldwide. But what do you make of these announcements? Humans naturally have the instinct to inquire about things around them. This has led to some exciting discoveries that are mysterious. Civilization has progressed this far because of exploration, and there have been many intriguing discoveries over time. Their discovery is followed up with research to fully understand how it came to be and how it is sustained. So today, we will be taking a look at 3 mysterious that are frightening yet intriguing. 3,000-year-old brain surgery Siberia. At the burial ground at Anshevsky Archaeological Site, southeast of Kansk in the Krasnoyarsk region, archaeologists unearthed the skeletal remains of a male who seemed to have had brain surgery. The patient was between 30 and 40 years old at the time of death, and the markings on his skull, archaeologists claim, are not those of spiritual practices, but an attempt at surgical intercession. Furthermore, it is vastly believed by scientists involved that there is proof that the patient not only survived the surgery, but lived for a while afterwards. The skeleton skull had a partial bone opening on the left side of the head with signs of bone healing. There were also traces of what experts believe to be an inflammatory reaction on the plates of the skull bones, further proving the theory that the patient did not only survive, but lived for at least a portion of time after the operation. This had to be the case in order for the wound to begin to adequately heal, though it's thought that he died of long-term inflammation inherently caused by the surgery. The culture of the male subject is unknown, but it is thought that the unknown culture may have been similar to the Karasuk culture. In the Bronze Age, an early form of surgery did occur. From what we know, it involved having the patient enter an altered state of mind, so the pain would not be focused upon. Various herbs and plants would be used as painkillers in antiquity, and the usage of psychedelics in ancient cultures is not unheard of, though hemp is what scientists believed was used by the people of this region. Surgery was likely somewhat ceremonial, if only to distract the patient from the upcoming agony they would otherwise suffer through, and would have involved the usage of dancing, drum music, and consumptions of psychedelics or flora meant to ease the pain. The team working on the archaeology cases claims that the surgeon made an incision, and an assistant would have helped them by stretching out the skin at the wound's edges to open up the area for medical instruments to enter it with ease. A similar skull dissection was talked about in the books written by Hippocrates in ancient Greece, which were written and performed about 6 centuries after this surgery. As such, it was a practice indeed performed in ancient cultures. We cannot definitively state that this operation was carried out with a specialized instrument. Nevertheless, some sort of medical instruments existed in Siberia and were widely used for post-mortem manipulations. These same instruments may have been applied for trepanation, said Dr. Slepchenko, a researcher involved in the discovery. He suggests a scraper was used and not a knife. We may only imagine the wonders lying beneath the Siberian soil. The future of archaeological findings is bright and full of the utmost potential. Warrior's 3,900-year-old suit of bone armor unearthed in Omsk. An extraordinary discovery was made in Omsk when archaeologists unearthed a full set of bone armor in near pristine condition. Bone armor in the past was viewed as something worn by elite warriors who proved their worth in battle. It was incredibly sturdy and strong compared to the contemporary alternatives for the era it was worn in. Experts phrased it as it was more precious than life, because it saved life. The armor was not buried alongside the warrior who adorned it, and it is the only current battle dress found in or around Omsk. This armor did not belong to the Pazyryk culture. It was likely used as the Samo-Semenskaya culture or Krotov culture that resided in the western forested areas of Siberia. This armor may have also been used as an exchange between cultures, warriors, or tribal leaders. Gifted to someone or even may have been a spoil of war as was common during those times. It is unique first of all because such armor was highly valued. It saved life. Secondly, it was found in a settlement and this has never happened before. There were found separate fragments in burials, like on Rostovka burial ground, said Boris Konnikov, an archaeologist curator. At this time, researchers are still uncertain about what animal or animals the bones belonged to. The bone armor was discovered deep within the ground, measuring down to 1.5 meters below the earth. A restoration is being performed on the armor set in hopes of restoring it to its former glory so that it may last us for many more centuries to come. Boris Konnikov has admitted that he and every other archaeologist involved was excited for the project. We ourselves cannot wait to see it, but at the moment it is undergoing restoration, which is a long, painstaking process. As a result, we hope to reconstruct an exact copy. Yuri Gerasimov, another researcher from the university's Institute of Archaeology, said that though there is no outward evidence to suggest the place where the bone armor was found was a place of worship, that is his theory, saying the following: while there is no indication that the place of discovery of the armor was a place of worship, it is very likely. Armor had great material value. There was no sense to dig it in the ground or hide it for a long time, because the fixings and the bones would be ruined. Such armor needs constant care. At the moment we can only fantasize who dug it into the ground and for what purpose. Was it for some ritual or sacrifice? We do not know yet. The bone plates were slightly damaged and shattered, but that is to be expected with something so painstakingly ancient and awe-inspiring. Restoration efforts are being made to clean these fragmented pieces of bone, photograph and sketch them with their location, and fix them together into a full, perfect plate. Scientists, historians, and archaeologists agree that the person to whom the armor belonged had surely been a hero of sorts, either a renowned warrior of his civilization or someone proficient in protecting others, and was so beloved that the armor was gifted to him. The site itself is home to countless other wondrous findings, primarily from the early Neolithic period up until the Middle Ages, with an abundance of weaponry, bone and stone arrowheads, spears tipped with bronze axes, and bronze knives. This area seemed to have been significantly populated during the Bronze Age. The excavation site lies beside the Irtysh River, whose owner is the Popovomsk radio factory. This factory, however, passionately supports further archaeological research and encourages more findings. Our goal is to save the site, to research it, and to promote it. For 1,500-year-old megalithic Superhenge buried 1 mile from Stonehenge. A team of archaeologists from the University of Bradford have reported that around 100 monoliths are buried just 3 kilometers from the popular Stonehenge in what appears to be the largest Neolithic monument built in the United Kingdom. The stones, some up to 5 meters high, constitute a construction 5 times larger than Stonehenge, which earned it the name Superhenge. The Neolithic structure, which was arranged in a C shape and bordered a valley, is 4,500 years old, is located at the Dyington Walls archaeological site, and is believed to have been used for religious rites and solstice rituals. Vince Gaffney, an archaeological science expert and one of the leaders of the project, said they had discovered one of the largest monuments in Europe that had been right under our noses for about 4,000 years. Without the need to excavate, using technologies for subway investigation, including sophisticated radar, scientists have detected 30 intact rocks and fragments of 60 others. They estimate that the structure may have been erected more than 4,500 years ago, at the same time Stonehenge was built, and that the complex may have been a gigantic ceremonial complex. The newly discovered structure is believed to have formed the perimeter of a kind of circus for rituals, supported by a natural depression in the ground, surrounded by a moat 17 meters wide, facing the Avon River. The discovery, according to those responsible, opens a door to the knowledge of the Neolithic culture in the British Isles. It is believed that, at some point, the custodians of the supposed ceremonial complex of Doington Walls, where Stonehenge and the new structure are located, decided to knock down the rocks of the latter and cover them with earth. It is not known at this time how long it remained standing. The finding is in addition to those made a year ago, which discovered a complex of temples and tombs under Stonehenge. The new discoveries may drastically change what was taken for granted about this Neolithic complex. Everything that has been written about the landscape of Stonehenge and the ancient monuments it houses, and that is going to add a new chapter of stories. Mysteries are all around us, with new ones cropping up almost every day and in a wide range of locations. No matter where you look, you are bound to discover something new and mysterious without an explanation. As the human race ventures further into the unknown, we continue to unearth new unsolved mysteries. From the bottom of the ocean to the deep darkness of caves, so many discoveries are just waiting to be found. Some fascinating and unsettling discoveries. Some of these shed light on our ancient history as a species, while others serve as clues to puzzles we have not yet cracked. So today, we will be taking a look at 3 recent discoveries that shed light on ancient civilizations. Ancient underground city discovered beneath a house in Anatolia. When you purchase a home, you rarely consider the potential of there being an underground city beneath the floorboards, and yet this is exactly what happened to a homeowner in Anatolia. Mustafa Bozdemir, a man in his 50s, inherited a house half a decade ago and made the choice to restore the estate, only for a subterranean city to be found beneath his house, of which 4,000 square miles have been thoroughly excavated with more still to be seen. Anatolia is a region of Turkey. The country is known for its abundance with underground cities such as these. Cappadocia, one of its districts, has over 40 cities built beneath the Earth's surface, and over 200 villages have been discovered underground with actual temples, secret passages and hidden rooms, and were able to host the lives of entire communities. Urgis University has been helping the excavation efforts. Bozdemir has confirmed that the team working on the house have indeed found human remains on the site which have been sent to be analyzed. The project director of Guntas, a Turkish restoration agency, has spoken about the fascinating find, saying, "We thought that there might be storage space for food or a stable beneath the house, but had no idea that it was part of an underground city. The underground city we found by accident during restoration begins a few meters under the ground and has 2 levels. There are parts resembling underground remains of settlements in Cappadocia. Wonderful structures emerged everywhere like an iron workshop and a loft." The mayor of the area, Mehmet Osman Bozoglu, stated, "We think that the underground city was active in the Roman, Byzantine, and Seljuk eras, and other stone buildings that were built in the Ottoman and Republican periods." Mayor Osman Bozoglu has announced his desire to continue the excavations until they manage to uncover the entire city, and believes that this city is linked with the nearby towns of Gezi, Zinsadir, and Turan. Clearly, the builders of the structure were vastly skilled in their craft, though modern scholars tend to wonder why the ancient peoples living in the area built these underground cities so intently. One idea is that of cultural beliefs or something more sinister, such as the risk of natural disasters, with researchers saying that these ancient cities are bunkers for catastrophes. Derinkuyu is the most prominent underground city with over 600 entrances, 11 levels, and could have easily allowed a population of several thousand to reside in its underground walls, hidden from the surface. Derinkuyu, Melikotsi, and all other underground towns have stables, living quarters, and a livestock quarters, wells, tanks where water was once stored, cooking pits, and even ventilation shafts to cleanse the air and provide necessary oxygen to the chambers. Tombs and bathrooms have also been found in a huge amount of these places. Malik Ghazi is far from being as extravagant as Derinkuyu, but its discovery nevertheless is a profound one that leads us closer to finding out the secrets of ancient Anatolia. The asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs may have created the Amazon. The asteroid that plummeted to Earth over 66 million years ago and ended the reign of the dinosaurs is a well-known phenomenon. However, recent discoveries have led researchers to believe that the infamous meteorite may have been responsible for something else as well: the creation of the impressively diverse Amazon rainforest. A new study published in the Journal of Science analyzed thousands of fossilized plants in an attempt to understand the effects of the mass extinction caused by that fateful asteroid. An estimated 75% of all life on Earth, from gigantic dinosaurs to microscopic bacteria, went extinct as a result. But now the area is home to one of the most diverse ecosystems on the planet. Is crucial in understanding what might happen as a result of a second mass extinction event. What the researchers found surprised them. According to the study, it appears that the same blast that wiped out such a significant portion of life on Earth was also responsible for creating the entirety of the tropical rainforests on our planet. As expected, analysis of plant fossils from before and after the blast revealed drastically altered landscapes. Before the asteroid, the land was full of sparsely growing conifers and ferns, whose wide spacing allowed plenty of light to reach the ground, so unlike the dense jungle that we are familiar with in the Amazon. Following the extinction of millions of species, plant diversity declined an estimated 45%, and analysis of over 50,000 fossilized pollen records showed that angiosperms or flowering plants predominated the region for the next 6 million years, covering what had once been a semi-diverse land with what has been called the Rain of Flowers. As the area began to recover from the devastation and new species started to emerge, the plants began growing much more thickly, allowing for dense vertical growth that promoted the development of new species of shade-loving plants that thrived in the new ground level of the developing jungle. The researchers offered 3 predominant theories as to why the regrowth looked so different from what was there before. The first and most widely accepted is that the enormous dinosaurs that roamed the area before their extinction prevented more dense growth simply due to their large bulk that trampled plants, in addition to the sheer number of plants the large herbivores likely consumed. The other 2 theories suggest that falling ash from the blast may have created soil that to the faster-growing flowering plants, or that the extinction of the conifers provided a perfect opportunity for the flowering plants to take over. The researchers were so interested in the before and after of this great meteorite because the Amazon rainforest and surrounding areas are currently undergoing what is called the second mass extinction. Only this one is caused entirely by humans. Monica Carvalho, who co-authored the study, concluded with the grim takeaway. The lesson learned here is that under rapid disturbances, tropical ecosystems do not just bounce back. They are replaced, and the process takes a really long time. The findings of the research study are fascinating but grim, as they indicate that if drastic action is not taken and soon, we may stand to lose the rainforests and all they offer the world, possibly forever. Scientists are watching proteins repair DNA in real time. Delving into more personal matters, let's talk about anatomy, but more specifically DNA. We all have it. It is the very component in our bodies that not only consists of codes that determine our features, such as if we will have blue or brown eyes, but it also serves to maintain our body systems in order to function. It is shaped as a double helix and consists of nucleotides, which are molecules that pair with specific molecules. The pairing of the nucleotides contributes to the double helix structure. The interesting thing about DNA is that it is constantly being replicated with each cell division. In other words, your DNA is being replicated as we speak, and on top of that, it does so about 2 trillion times a day, since cells are constantly dividing. It is inevitable that there will be mistakes, breaks, or mutations. The scary thought is that if the mistakes are not properly corrected, it can lead to some health consequences, such as in the case of cancer. However, there is a silver lining. Our bodies have repairing mechanisms in the form of proteins that aid in DNA repair. To advance in treating illnesses, scientists have found it crucial to understand DNA and thus its repair mechanisms, in the hope that it will shine a light that someday will prove to be helpful in the fight against diseases. That is precisely why Dr. Donna Whalen from Australia focused on observing DNA repair via an approach known as single-molecule localization microscopy, which allows for focusing on individual molecules and molecular interactions on a smaller scale, as the name somewhat suggests. Through it, she has been able to pinpoint that DNA is repaired by the body in one of 2 ways: typically either sporadic fusing where the breaks occur or via homologous recombination, which is the process where a break is repaired by finding a similar and compatible DNA sequence to attach to the break. The former repair method can be speedy but faulty. The latter is slower but more efficient and less likely to be fallible. Among other observations Whalen made through her introspection, she noticed that a specific protein known as Phi3BP1 works in an interesting way when it comes to DNA repair. It does not directly work on the repair site, but rather works more as a behind-the-scenes helper, so to speak, as it was viewed to be in the same relative area as the repair site but not directly at the repair site but still contributed to the repair. This BRCA2 is typically seen in a negative limelight due to its association with breast cancer. However, breast cancer is a consequence of a mutation in the DNA sequence that corresponds to the BRCA2 protein. And as it turns out, the protein somewhat redeems itself, as Whalen showed that it contributes an essential role in DNA repair, and that there is even a protein that substitutes for it in some cases, which illustrates versatility and redundancy in the different DNA repair mechanisms present in our bodies. All of these observations that Whalen made have left her, among other scientists, to believe that these could very well be useful in applying to modern-day medicine, in the hope of someday being able to replicate them in a lab setting for more effective approaches in battling diseases and disorders. Between the potential sighting of a cosmic string to a long-lost planet within Earth's, it is a lot to take in. And believe it or not, these are just barely scratching the surface. It is only a matter of time until there will be a crack in some other age-old mystery or an entirely new discovery. But what do you think of these discoveries? Paranormal is a subject that interests many people. Many of us are interested in the unknown, with some even having experienced it themselves. It's these experiences that's led some to investigate the subject, causing them to find a variety of answers for what happened to them. There are those that believe that we share the planet with paranormal entities, and every so often they make themselves known. Science, however, tells us that ghosts don't exist, and it's actually our brains playing tricks on us. They go into detail that many things can happen to the brain that causes us to see ghosts, and some of these examples can be attributed to us being tired, our brain identifying objects in the dark, or our senses being heightened after watching a horror movie, and therefore we are more alert about what's going on around us. And say that the topic should be taken seriously and investigated. Other theories have been put forward to try and explain what we're seeing. For example, some know that humans' visual spectrum is ingrained, and that we can only see a certain amount of things, while certain animals have a much wider spectrum. Snakes, for example, are able to see in infrared vision. Some suggest it goes to beings that exist in a spectrum not picked up by the human eye, and this is why sometimes motion detectors pick up on paranormal beings. Researchers have also said that a variety of different places can be haunted, with some of the most common places being that of graveyards. Old buildings and houses where something bad has happened. However, one place you wouldn't expect to be haunted is that of ships and even the ocean. A man was working on an old boat when he took a mysterious photograph. Upon reviewing it, he discovered he'd accidentally captured something in the background. The image first started to make the rounds online back in August of 2014, with the eyewitness saying the following about the image. As I said in a previous post, I work at sea. Last month, we came into a dry dock to carry out refit and repairs. Dry dock is when a ship is brought into a lock, the gates closed and all the water pumped out, leaving the ships high and dry on the blocks, thus allowing repairs and inspections on the underside of the hull. Next to us was an old military frigate being broken down for scram. She had arrived around 2 weeks prior to us. Once the frigate was on the blocks and all dry, all the crew left the old girl to her veins. A sad sight, but that's how these things go. Once all the sensitive stuff had been removed, the dock workers were free to go on. The dock foreman John went on board first with a camera to take pictures of work areas. All in all, he took a couple hundred. This was one of them. He later sent all of the photographs to his boss, who, upon seeing this one, called John straight away asking the following. Who is the guy with the axe, the edge of the camera flash? At the time, John was confused as he never saw anyone while on the ship. The area where this photograph was taken was in a cross alley deep inside the ship. He was walking around with a torch and a camera. And when he'd go to take a photograph, he would turn off the torch, leaving him in total darkness. After this, he would turn the torch back on and be on his way. Because of it being a military ship, the police were soon contacted. The police turned up and carried out their own investigation. However, they noted that they didn't find any trace of anyone being on the ship. It's also interesting to note that there was only one way on and off the ship, and this was by a gameway covered by CCTV. It was very unlikely that someone would jump off the side of the ship as it was a 25-meter drop. You couldn't jump over without being seriously injured. No one was seen to leave the ship after John had taken this. If you zoom in on the image, you can make out what appears to be a person. The witness went on to say the following: "I am a skeptic. Maybe it's a trick of the flash reflecting off something. But if you really zoom in, you can make out the face, ear, collar of the jacket and the axe. And before anyone asks, I'm not going to name the ship or where she is, as I'm not sure if I'm even supposed to have a picture of the innards of a military ship. This gave me serious goosebumps. Needless to say, I didn't go back on board for a long time. Some people gave their opinion on what they thought the being could be. This caused some to suggest that something dark took place in the region, and now that event has left an imprint that gets played over and over. Other examples of residual haunting include that of something making banging noises or turning on the same light over and over. Although this may sound creepy, residual haunting is actually one of the better hauntings to experience. According to paranormal researchers, these entities will let you know that they're there, but they'll usually stay out of your way. There's also a dark entity that's allegedly been plaguing the human race since recorded history, and this entity goes by many different names. For many years, a number of people all around the world have reported waking up at night and seeing a mysterious shadowy figure, and some suggested that the being in this photograph is a shadow figure. The shadowy figure has over time become famous, leading onto it to be given a variety of different names, some of which include the Shadow Man, the Hat Man, and the Shadow Person. The phenomenon has gained widespread popularity, and a number of documentaries have been made on the subject, trying to get to the bottom of what people are experiencing. However, it seems that the more the subject is looked into, the more questions are put forward. A dedicated blog known as the Hat Man Project has also been launched where people share their experiences with the Hat Man. The history of the Hat Man phenomenon goes way back in time, and different written records of the Hat Man have been found. In fact, some evidence of the Hat Man-like entity have been found in scriptures of previous civilizations as well, showcasing that whatever this thing is, it's been plaguing humanity for a long time. Recently, various photographs have been making the rounds on social media showing strange beams of light. Interestingly, these strange lights have been showing up in various places, and this has caused several eyewitnesses to give their opinions on what the lights could be. One man said the following: "While on the way to work, I saw what appeared to be a giant beam of light open up in the sky. This light wasn't the same as the natural light piercing the clouds. It was massive and really bright. I got distracted while heading to work, which eventually caused me to be late. But I couldn't miss the opportunity to see this mysterious light. I have no idea what it was, and I could also see other drivers pointing it out as they were driving by. It was like something out of a movie." Interestingly, this isn't the first time these strange beams of lights have been reported. Residents in Rockwell, Texas reported giant booms and lights in the area. Those who witnessed the event said it illuminated the sky. Skeptics argued that what people were reporting was just the sun shining through the clouds. But residents countered this and said if this was the case, then the beam should have spread to the horizon. But in this case, it didn't. It was very direct. Various photographs then started to reach social media, where thousands of people started to give their opinions on the mysterious lines. One resident said the following: "As I was driving, I noticed a distinct light coming from the sky. Caught my eyes. It didn't look natural. I'd never seen anything like this before. I had my mom in the car and she was surprised as well. The beam of light was very distinct, and it didn't look like the sun coming through the clouds." Another witness had this to say: "The light certainly did look weird, but I think I've seen something similar. We call these things gold rays, but they do usually have more light rays. This one seems to be one giant one. Scientists have come forward with a possible explanation. They have suggested it could be an anti-solar ray. These rays are parallel shafts of sunlight from holes in the clouds, and their apparently odd directions are a perspective effect. As of right now, more of these photographs are being shared around, with some of the most recent ones coming from New York. Again, these lights are similar to the ones that are being reported, but are noted as being larger. The first unmanned mission to the moon was in 1959 by the Soviet lunar program, with the first man landing being Apollo 11 in 1969. The primary objective of Apollo 11 was to complete a national goal set by President John F. Kennedy, and this was on May 25, 1961. The goal was to perform a crewed lunar landing in return to Earth. Additional flight objectives included scientific exploration by the lunar module, deployment of a television camera to transmit signals to Earth, and deployment of a solar wind composition experiment and seismic experiment package. During the exploration, the two astronauts were to collect samples from the moon and return them to Earth. They were also given instructions to photograph the lunar surface as much as they could. On July 20, 1969, American astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans ever to land on the moon. Around 6.5 hours later, Armstrong became the first person to walk on the moon. However, over the years, photographs have made the rounds on social media, and some have found interesting anomalies. NASA has said the majority of these can be explained, and these are either dust particles on the lens or just other space anomalies that happen to get picked up. Others are not so sure, and have found various anomalies that they suggest are actually UFOs. One photograph that's currently making the rounds is this one of Buzz Aldrin. It's the photograph of Buzz just before he steps on the moon. However, those that have zoomed in on this image have allegedly found an unidentified flying object in the background. And not only that, but they say this craft matches the same shape as those that are seen on our planet. Amateur researchers have said that the craft is triangular or boomerang-shaped. This is noted as being one of the most common shaped UFOs that are reported from around the world, leading some to put forward some interesting theories for why this craft was there during the moon landing. There's some that have suggested that the craft seen here is actually one of the triangular UFOs that's commonly seen on Earth. These black triangles are commonly seen in various countries, most commonly the United Kingdom, the United States, and Germany. The craft in the photograph matches the description of the triangle UFOs, which caused some to suggest that they may not belong to us. Various triangle-shaped UFOs have been seen close to the moon, which has caused some to question why they're there and why they're so interested in our moon. For over 40 years, the triangle UFOs caused much debate. It's perhaps one of the more mysterious UFOs that's reported. These crafts are often reported as being silent, and have been on a number of occasions just hovering in the sky. Sightings of the triangle UFOs often come in waves, with people seeing dozens at a time. They are also perhaps the most photographed UFO as well, with even news programs covering them. What's most interesting about these crafts is that they've been witnessed hovering motionless in the sky, and then suddenly making a high-speed departure. Pilots have said that they're faster than any conventional aircraft that's currently in the sky. Some have put forward the theory that the triangle UFO is a top-secret government craft, while others have said it's most likely the next step in the stealth series of crafts, hence why they're able to do things that other planes can't. There's still a group of people, though, that think that these objects are unexplained. Although we mentioned that sightings come in waves, here in the UK these crafts are seen nearly every other week. Incredibly, there have been around 4,000 reports of the triangles since the 1990s in the UK alone. There have also been waves of triangle sightings in Belgium, France, Holland, and Germany. One skeptic, however, spoke out about this alleged UFO and said the following: "What I find interesting about this photograph is that these are the same people who claim we never went to the moon. And yet, here we have a photograph of an alleged UFO. It seems that these type of people can't make their minds up on whether we actually went or not." From looking at the photograph, to me it just looks like a camera anomaly, or possibly a small piece of space debris. The only thing we have to go by is this tiny object in the corner of an image. And I'm sure if we zoomed in on many of the Apollo images, we'd find similar-looking objects. For me, this is completely natural. NASA also gets a lot of questions in regards to UFOs, and one of these came from a user on Twitter. They asked the following: I know that it's true that Apollo 11 did spot a UFO. Is it true that other radios could pick up when the television broadcast was shut down during the spotting of the UFOs? If so, is it true these radios could pick up Apollo 11 saying the other spacecraft were spotted on the crater edge of the moon and were much more advanced than Apollo 11 technology? Dr. David Morrison, who served as an institute director at NASA, said the following to the questions. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but you are repeating stories that are known to be false. No astronauts saw UFOs. There are no secret Apollo transmissions, radio, or television picked up by hams. There was no case of Apollo astronauts spotting other spacecraft on crater rims or anywhere else. Others disagree with this and have said that over the years many different types of unidentified flying objects have been seen close to the moon, and that after investigations are carried out, many of these are forgotten about as they can't be explained. With one person saying the following, I'm not surprised that people still fight this. After all, it's not like NASA and other space agencies are just going to come forward and admit that we've seen UFOs. Of course, they're going to say the claims are false. All one has to do is look at recent sightings and news surrounding the topic, and it's easy to come to a logical answer for what's going on. Again, though NASA have said that these objects are nothing more than camera anomalies, they've stopped speaking on the matter because whatever they say is just pushed aside by believers. Interestingly, though, astronauts themselves have spoken on the topic, with some even going public with their encounters and what they saw in space. This has only helped fuel the belief that there are mysterious objects in space, and that as of right now, our tech is nowhere near as advanced as theirs. It seems like the topic of UFOs and the interest around it is at an all-time high, with some even believing that the government will be coming forward with some credible evidence in regards to the topic. It seems that time will tell whether the government knows more than what they're letting on. So what do you make of this alleged unidentified flying object captured in this photograph of Buzz Aldrin? Do you think it's a genuine UFO, or just a camera anomaly or space junk? Nothing compares to the wonders of our world. For eons, we have created history, science, and music. Humanity has created quite the spot for itself on this earth. Even now, we discover and create endlessly. So today, we'll be taking a look at 3 amazing discoveries. Uncontacted tribe found deep in Amazon rainforest. Surprising as it may sound, there are still countless tribes which our modern civilizations have never contacted for a plethora of reasons. The first is that they might just be hidden within the vastness of the Amazon. Alternatively, even when we are aware of a secluded tribe, making it is not always the best solution. These people have been isolated from the rest of us for hundreds, if not thousands of years. We could easily give them diseases which we are vaccinated or immune to that could be devastating for their communities. Brazil has an indigenous foundation called FUNAI who specialize in protecting and researching the various tribes of the Amazon. Most of the time, uncontacted tribes are found in clearings on satellite images taken from space. The Amazon is a huge landmass, and therefore it is only natural that there are countless tribes still unknown to us, most of which lie in the most remote corners of the rainforest. FUNAI's regional coordinator, Rabrisha Amarim, confirmed one such tribe's existence after planes were sent to fly over the area and check whether the satellite images they were spotted on were correct. Indeed, they were. The area seen by pilots and satellites revealed 4 huts with roofs made of straw, surrounded by tall banana trees in the midst of the thick jungle landscape. It is said that the population of the tribe contains about 200 members. Although contact has not been made, their language is assumed to be a variant of the Pono-linguistic family. FUNAI reports that the tribe lies on the borders of Bolivia, Peru, and Brazil. The area itself is officially referred to as the Vale du Javari, and that this tribe is not alone in being on the border. Contacted. Until relatively recently, many tribes were unknown about. Fabrizio Amarim Clavali du Javari has the largest number of uncontacted communities in the world. He also spoke of Fune's concerns with the future survival of these tribes, as our ever-advancing world is constantly changing and bringing new threats to their existence. To list a few concerns stated by Amarim, among the main threats to the well-being of these groups are illegal fishing, hunting, logging, mining, cattle ranching, missionary action, and narco-trafficking. The organization has recognized 14 tribes in the Vale du Javari that have yet to be contacted by our outside world. An estimated 2,000 people or so reside in them. It is highly possible that there is a myriad of tribes not yet known about in the thickness of the Amazon jungle. As it stands, Brazilian officials try to limit any opportunities for contacting these tribes, aiming instead to research them from afar. And yet, with the many rising problems, there is a chance we will have no choice but to contact them to warn them of impending problems. Tragically, some of these tribes are fading out at rapid rates. In the region of Tanaru, there is a lone tribal member of a tribe thought to have been slaughtered ruthlessly by cattle ranchers in the area. He is now seen all alone and steadily moving from place to place in his paranoia. Little is known about this poor man. We know not his name, nor age, nor tribe or language. An alias given to him by those observing him deemed him the man of the hole, because he could not use his holes to capture prey or to hide himself. Contact has been attempted but rejected. Funei has allocated a small amount of land to protect him, but the surrounding area is full of cattle ranchers who, historically, would hire mercenaries to get rid of the tribal members around their lands. Something in space keeps exploding repeatedly. A mysterious cosmic blast has been spotted by astrophysicists, expelling intense and frequent blasts of pure energy. Scientists are still baffled as to what might be causing these odd explosions. The bursts have been labeled as fast radio bursts or FRBs. This cosmic marvel originates back in 2007 when it first appeared. The radio aspect of the electromagnetic spectrum is triggered by FRBs, which create radio wave pulses. These blasts are short, lasting a mere few thousandths of a single second, but their strength and power is so great it overpowers the amount of energy our sun releases in an entire year. It is common for FRBs to release a radio wave explosion only one time in their lifetime. But the object now known as FRB 121102 and some others released these bursts of energy multiple times at random moments. FRB 121102 was found to be located 3 billion light-years away from Earth in a dwarf galaxy. Using the Chinese VAST or 500-meter aperture spherical radio telescope, astronomers were able to experiment and explore possibilities with FRB 121102. FAST is the most advanced radio telescope on the planet. It is able to detect the smallest changes in outer space that normal telescopes used by space organizations such as NASA might not manage to see. In a span of only 60 hours, FRB 121102 blasted energy a shocking 1,652 times. That is up to 117 times in a single hour. Never before has an FRB created pulses at such insane speeds. FRBs tend to occur away from Earth, meaning we rarely get a chance to adequately study them. Exceptionally, in 2020, an FRB was discovered in our Milky Way. It turns out that the source of this particular FRB close to us is a magnetar. Magnetars are deceased stars produced from neutron stars. This is the first time we have, and it is uncertain whether all magnetars are the origins of FRBs or just this one. Still, where the FRB comes from is now not known. The leading theory suggests it comes from magnetic reactions on the magnetar's surface. Its magnetic field rivals that of Earth by trillions, and therefore the FRB blasts might come as a result of such volatile magnetic fields. The FRB blasts created by the Milky Way magnetar are nowhere near as intense or frequent as FRB 121102's is, but research into this subject is still frail and there are infinite things scientists do not yet understand about FRBs. None of the research is yet conclusive. Blue whales eat 3 times more than scientists previously estimated. You would think that how much do whales eat would be a simple question to answer, but as it turns out, it's complicated. Whales feed in depths difficult for us to observe. As such, the question has been estimated, but recent evidence suggests they eat far more than previously assumed. Certain species of whales devour feverishly for months on end, only to fast for the remainder of the year. Others eat in alternate food patterns, and other species are yet again different, making researching how much they eat tedious. Matthew Savacher from Stanford University states, "This is such a basic question. I'd assumed we'd figured it out 30, 40, or 50 years ago, but no one had ever measured it." Savacher and his team put trackers onto various whales across the Atlantic, Pacific, and Southern Oceans to try and keep track their eating, with drones sent to check on the numbers of krill. The end study revealed that a singular blue whale is capable of consuming more than 16 tons of food daily. This is shocking because earlier estimates were about 3 times smaller than this. A marine biologist from the University of Edinburgh, Sion Henley, claims, "Whales contribute vital nutrients to their ecosystems in the form of their defecation. Carbon, nitrogen, and iron are spread through the ocean due to whales eating as much as they do. This brings concerns about the dying populations of krill around the Antarctic, as fewer krill means less food for whales, which might cause them to begin starving. Awful news considering they are still recovering from the brutal whaling culture of the past few centuries. This also allows us insight into whale cultures. According to Savacher, killer whales and blue whales are nothing alike when it comes not only to their eating patterns, but also their behavior and interpersonal relationships. Antarctic baleen whales and minke whales especially are still recovering from the intense overwhaling of the 18th and 19th centuries. So it's logical that it will take them a while to recover. On a more cheerful note, however, the South Atlantic humpback whales have started to increase in numbers since the 20th century. The numbers of krill are thought to be going down rapidly as the whales recover, but a marine biogeochemist from the Imperial College in London, Emma Cavern, argues that the study, whilst respectable, is too quick to conclude the simplest option. The krill are not disappearing only because whales eat more than we assumed. Cavern reminds the public that overfishing and climate change are likewise causes that are depleting the levels of krill in the oceans. Marine scientists are hoping to put more time and effort into researching blue whales and how to help protect them from the devastating effects of global warming. But what do you make of these interesting discoveries? Antarctica is a wondrous place of many hidden wonders. It is the only uncivilized continent on our map, and by far holds countless illustrious secrets that scientists have been attempting to uncover for centuries. So today we'll be taking a look at 3 amazing discoveries in Antarctica. Hidden mountain range discovered under Antarctica ice. The concept of 2.5 miles worth of mountains concealed beneath ice seems like a science fiction concept, but as it turns out, it is very real. A mountain range the size of the European Alps was found in Antarctica with mountains that peak up to 3,000 meters above sea level. This new discovery brings into question how the Antarctic ice sheets truly formed. The mountains were first detected in the 1970s by the Soviet scientist Grigory Gamburtsev. But aside from the knowledge of their existence, their measurements and the length were but a mystery. Until now, according to the British Antarctic Survey geophysicist Fausto Ferragioli, when we went out to the ice we knew there was a potentially elevated region there. But we had no idea what it looked like. We now see that this mountain range is the size of the Alps, but it looks like them too. It has all these fresh-looking peaks and valleys. A team of specialists spent weeks on end in the freezing Antarctic conditions attempting to map the mountain ranges. They labeled the range's highest point Dome A, with the temperatures getting below -30 degrees Celsius. Special planes with specific magnetic and gravity-sensitive radars had to be used to fly around the ice sheets to give the researchers as accurate data about the hidden mountain range, so that they could see the actual mountains themselves without the expensive and near impossible venture to get down to them themselves. Their constructed map reaches 497 miles in length and reaches widths of 248 miles. In comparison to the Antarctic mountains peaking at 3,000 meters, the highest peaks of the famous Alps only go as high as 4,800 meters above sea level. The current scientific theory is that these grand mountains were created due to tectonic plate clashes. However, these should not exist in the Antarctic. Ferricioli states that since Antarctica is ancient Precambrian, there ought to be no mountains there at all. The nucleus of the Gamburtsev Mountains is assumed to be 10 square kilometers east of the Antarctic sheet, which is believed to be the largest ice sheet to exist on the planet before the leading theory was simple and the most logical. Had formed gradually. Now, with these brand new findings, the world of Antarctic researchers has been turned upside down. Ferricioli states, but the presence of peaks and valleys could suggest that the ice sheet formed quickly. We just don't know. Our big challenge now is to dive into the data to get a better understanding of what happened. Alternatively, in accordance with Robin Bell, who works for the University of Columbia, the temperatures at our camps hovered around -30°C. But 3 kilometers beneath us at the bottom of the ice sheet we saw liquid water in the valleys. The radar data let us know that it was much warmer at the base of the ice sheet. Ferricioli believes this is only the beginning, that there is still much left to uncover about the mystic mountain range that follows the Antarctic ice sheet. It is reported that the survey planes that mapped the radar images flew across the range over 20 separate times to ensure they got images from every single angle possible in order to make the map as detailed as it could possibly be. Because the mountains are under the ice sheet, the current plan to proceed with the research is to find the area where the oldest ice lies. Drilling it and digging out the oldest ice will help scientists adequately understand where the mountains came from, how they formed, and possibly even make it able for them to figure out why they formed in the first place. These ice cores can also help us understand our planet's history of ever-altering climates and how we have contributed to the production of CO2. Satellite images show near collision of an iceberg in Antarctica. Icebergs can reach colossal sizes. One such iceberg, thought to be the width and length of almost twice the size of Paris, barely managed to evade crashing into a tall ice shelf from which it separated in the first place, according to satellite images. Had the iceberg hit the ice shelf, it is fully believed that the collision would have been the catalyst for an even larger iceberg to be freed from the ice shelf and sent into the freezing Antarctic oceans. The fissure on the Brunt ice shelf appeared in November of 2020 and soon cut into the iceberg known as A74. Ever since it split from the Brunt, A74 has been floating close by for months on end due to the intensity of the ocean's flow. The Brunt ice shelf is already severely suffering from greater rifts and fissures. The potential for A74 to hit it only worsens its chances as the separation between the Brunt and A74 was the third worst ice shelf split in the past decade. The European Space Agency claimed that, in early August, strong easterly winds have spun the iceberg around the western tip of Brunt, brushing slightly against the ice shelf before continuing southwards. Had the drifting iceberg hit the unstable ice shelf with severe force, it may have triggered the release of the first ice of a new 656 square mile sized iceberg. This new iceberg would challenge even the colossal A74 with its horrifically impressive height and width, which of course spells out great trouble for our planet. A member of the ESA publicly stated, "The nose-shaped piece of the ice shelf, which is even larger than A74, remains connected to the Brunt ice shelf, but barely. If the berg had collided more violently with this piece, it could have accelerated the fracture of the remaining ice bridge, causing it to break away. It does not seem as though the risk is going away anytime soon, and it is sadly believed that the huge chunk of ice is bound to break away at any moment, given but the slightest push will be enough for it to crumble." Brunt, A74, and the prospective new iceberg are being closely monitored by glaciologists everywhere for changes in the ice shelf. The British Antarctic Survey claimed that the Brunt ice shelf was unsafe back in 2017, but the situation has only worsened since then. The temperatures of the Antarctic have risen to a shocking 3 degrees Celsius in only the past 70 years, a truly terrifying thought to consider. Icy glue may control pace of Antarctic ice shelf breakup. Due to a combined effort from the University of California, Irvine, and NASA's Californian Jet Laboratory, a mind-blowing discovery has been made. It is possible that they finally found the reason why an enormous iceberg from the Larsen Sea ice shelf is the size of the whole U.S. state of Delaware. It broke off its parent shelf 4 years ago in 2017. There exists a material called mélange. Mélange is a combination of tiny icebergs, sea ice, and wind-blown snow that mixes into a sort of ice glue, which has been found to be the key ingredient for holding ice shelves intact. Unfortunately, if this new theory that mélange is vastly responsible for gluing the ice shelves together is correct, then we might have even less time than we assumed before the ice shelves completely melt and cause a worldwide catastrophe. Simply explained, ice shelves are aspects of glaciers that traverse the oceans freely. Though haltingly, they also help reduce the continent's augmentation to the rising sea levels. In the past 70 years, ice shelves have been moving at an increased pace and melting at alarming rates. Cracks appear significantly more often, and as the cracks deepen, they inevitably release more icebergs, which then proceed to melt until the process repeats ad infinitum. Global warming is fully blamed as the reason behind why this is occurring. However, the manner by which the ice shelves are warming are not fully understood by scientists as they are responding to the rising temperatures strangely. Mélange might be to blame. It permeates through the crevices of the ice shelves. Then it creates a thin layer of further ice that sticks the layers together. You see, Irvine professor Eric Rignot spoke about mélange. We always suspected that this mélange played a key role, but until recently we did not have good observations of its characteristics. When an ice shelf melts by itself without the mélange melting, the gaps in the ice shelf actually lessen. Model tests revealed they can fill from wide gaps of 259 feet to only 79 feet in size. Even the thinning of both mélange and the ice shelves themselves fills the gaps. And as such, the melting alone is not enough to explain why the ice shelves are breaking up so much in the past decade. And then the researchers decided to try melting the mélange alone, and soon thereafter realized that when the mélange melts by itself, the fissures increase in size at an accelerated velocity. In other words, when the mélange melts due to heat, it loses its glue-like properties and the ice shelves begin to break away. This knowledge helps us understand how rapidly the sea levels will rise and how much time we have left before global warming overtakes us. But what do you make of these 3 incredible discoveries? Mysteries are all around us, and with mysteries come discoveries. Sometimes secrets lie dormant for thousands of years until we uncover their truths. Likewise, as we develop as a species, our technology develops with us. What future mysteries will be unfurled? So today we will be taking a look at 3 interesting discoveries. Archaeologists have discovered a lost Civil War tunnel under Alcatraz prison. The Alcatraz prison has gone down in history as one of the world's most infamous prisons. The small island it is placed on was once home to a lighthouse, then a military fortress, and eventually the prison that housed some of the era's most dangerous criminals. Nowadays, Alcatraz prison is a popular tourist attraction. Countless secrets are hidden in between the concrete walls and layers of the prison. And yet recently it has come to light that a mystery has laid latent beneath the infamous tourist location for the past 150 years. Researchers recently found something extraordinary beneath the small island, buildings and tunnels that have since been dated back to the American Civil Conflict of 1861 to 1865. Timothy Dismet, one of the researchers involved with the tunnel's discovery and an archaeologist, has stated, "I was surprised for several reasons. The remains of these historical archaeological features were just a few centimeters beneath the surface, and they were miraculously and impeccably preserved. The concrete veneer of the recreation yard floor is incredibly thin and, in fact, in places sitting directly atop the architecture from the 1860s. The archaeology team did not proceed to dig the historical site up, as that would have quite possibly ruined the entire underground structure. What they did instead of digging was to use the latest technology, a ground-penetrating laser radar, to obtain detailed scans of the island's underground. Then the team used period-authentic maps of Alcatraz to determine what lies beneath the prison island. Timothy Dismet proceeded to explain what his team discovered in the findings. We also learned that some of the earthwork traverses were covered over with thin concrete layers through time, likely to decrease erosion on the rainy, windy island. It was wonderful to find the history just beneath our feet that we can visualize for the public. What the team discovered specifically were the residues of buried buildings described by the archaeologists as bomb-proof, so to speak. The tunnels are constructed of vaulted brick masonry with ventilation ducts meant for making them breathable, the kind of tunnel you might have to stay in for a prolonged amount of time. The east-west tunnel ran directly beneath the prison's recreation yard, as previously stated. Many people are unaware of Alcatraz's role as a 19th-century fortification for military personnel during the era of the 1849 gold rush, civil conflict, and even the time period of the widespread Manifest Destiny. The tunnels come from Alcatraz's time as a military base, and remnant buildings from this time remain on the 50-acre island. The clandestine underground was created to protect San Francisco from invasions, despite us knowing what existed prior to the building of the prison. Before this discovery, we lacked the specific knowledge of what the island was like. All our data came from past documents and a limited number of artifacts that remained from the pre-prison era of Alcatraz. These tunnels can shed an incredible amount of light on what inhabiting this mysterious island might have been like before its dark prison history. John Martini, a historian who has dedicated his life to uncovering more about Alcatraz, stated, "This really reinforces what several historians and archaeologists had long suspected. Up until this point, we had nothing to go on except for a few visible trace remains and maps and a lot of suspicion. On a small island, there's only so many places you can build. The existence of such structures was contemplated by archaeologists in the past, but they lacked the means to prove it. Now the team hopes that the technique they used could be used in other places around the world or historical landmarks they are unable to dig up." In the words of Desmet, these results are significant in that they show how modern technology can be used to answer fundamental questions of archaeological importance. Space tourism company to launch commercial flights to the stratosphere by 2024. Traveling to space, a concept that, until recently, was nothing more than a wishful fantasy straight out of a sci-fi novel or TV show. Well, now Worldview Enterprises has entered the scene, and they are planning on revolutionizing the spaceflight industry to make spaceflights accessible to a wider range of people. Worldview Enterprises was established 10 years ago in Arizona and is now offering a buy using rocketless balloons that will travel straight up into the stratosphere. A far cry from Bezos' Blue Origin flight, the Worldview Enterprises experience will be an interesting endeavor to be sure. The balloons will lift Voyagers 18 miles into the air. This is nowhere near as deep into space as the company's competitors offer. True space is said to begin at the Kármán line, 100 kilometers into space, though others argue it begins at 50 miles up. Blue Origin's flight can get you just above the Kármán line at 106 kilometers. The peak of the Worldview Enterprises flight might disappoint, but they are confident in their rocketless aviation, claiming it will be worth the once-in-a-lifetime experience. Clients will be able to witness the Earth's curve for the first time with their own eyes, as well as see the true darkness of space. CEO Ryan Hartman stated, "We're redefining space tourism. Lamentably, the tickets start at $50,000. Hardly a cheap venture for those curious about participating in the journeys. The flights are said to be between 6 and 8 hours in length. Some journeys might last several days. The balloons are more accurately capsules that can hold up to 8 people at a time." The company is planning on operating 100 flights annually over various historically or culturally important landmarks that will supposedly last 5 days. Some such destinations include the Great Barrier Reef, the Giza Pyramids, and the wonders of the world, and the journeys are allegedly going to be smooth and gentle. Worldview Enterprises argue that, unlike Blue Origin flights, which use rocket power and suffer G-force, their balloon alternatives will allow people of all sizes and ages to traverse space. When asked about whether the Worldview Enterprise space travel is a joyride, CEO Ryan Hartman refuted it, saying most people realize. Hartman claims he wishes to turn space travel into a commodity for all sorts of people from all walks of life, for families, for couples, for cosmos-loving individuals. Hartman believes that space is the future of the travel industry. The very first flight has already been entirely sold out by Space for Humanity, a non-profit organization that is offering the purchase tickets to anyone who wishes to participate but is unable to afford the relatively expensive tickets themselves. The first flight will begin in Arizona, near to the Grand Canyon. However, the company are hopeful that they might be able to add other landmarks to that list soon after they can prove how the world should invest in their idea. Ball-shaped mass found 3,200 miles beneath the surface of the Earth. Deep beneath the Earth lies our planet's inner core. This ball-shaped iron mass is the reason for our magnetic field. Back in the 1950s, it was believed the inner core was solid, but now it has been proven that it is in fact composed of various materials. Molten metal liquids, soft structures, and harsh objects form the core, as discovered by geophysicist Rhett Butler. Clearly, no human nor machine has ever seen the core. The heat and depth make it unavailable to study up close. As a result, we have only ever been able to make educated assumptions regarding its components. Butler and his co-author, Seiji Tsubo, used earthquake waves to research the core. Butler explains, illuminated by earthquakes in the crust and upper mantle, and observed by seismic observatories at Earth's surface, seismology offers the only direct way and its processes. Seismic waves move the Earth's layers, and thus studying their movements helps us determine the densities, temperatures, and minerals within the particular layers. By using the results taken from two different sides of an earthquake, Tsubo and Butler gathered enough data to place into Japan's Earth supercomputer generator and evaluated their findings. Their research suggested that, unlike the 1950s and 1970s theories that the inner core is actually composed of various hard, liquid, and soft regions together in a mixture held together by pressure. In Butler's words, this puts new constraints upon the composition, thermal history, and evolution of Earth. This changes how the magnetic field may be studied in the future. Knowledge of this boundary condition from seismology may enable better predictive models of the geomagnetic field which shields and protects life on our planet. Our future is shaping up to be something extraordinary. Who knows what awaits us in the years to come? Will space travel be a common occurrence? Will we understand how our own Earth works with new insight? Will more historical secrets be unraveled? Time can only tell, but for now we can marvel at these amazing findings. But what do you make of these discoveries? Some of the most interesting and mysterious videos are captured by accident. These rushed encounters usually result in blurred footage, and this is normally due to the fact that the individual in question wasn't expecting to see anything. Modern-day smartphone cameras are great for close-up photographs, but anything that's 10 meters away and further becomes blurry. Videoing something in the sky that's moving is even more of a challenge. However, with steady hands, one is able to take a decent video. The individual behind this interesting recording is that of Mr. Joey Taka. At the time of the recording, Joey was in a parking lot in New Mexico, just outside of Tina's Cafe. As he looked up, he could see that the plane was being followed by 3 objects, saying that these strange objects were keeping a strict formation and didn't move. Joey said that the camera was on maximum zoom, and that it was really hard to see the objects with his natural eyesight. Upon viewing the footage, he was able to see that he'd captured the plane and the strange objects next to it, noting that the slightest movements with his hands would move the camera a lot. Joey said the following: towards the end of the video, you will see the plane with the objects following. Sorry for the bad video. I was trying to spot it with my own eyes at the same time. End quote. As you can imagine, the video led to many people responding, with some going on to detail their own encounters with these objects. Some users said that we can rule out them being any kind of airplane, noting that the objects are too small and don't look anything like a plane, and also said that they kept a strict formation matching many eyewitness descriptions. One user said the following: I think this is the real deal. The sound of the objects slowly disappearing behind the clouds, and if you zoom in at the very end you can still see these objects. Usually when these things are faked they just suddenly vanish during one frame, but that doesn't happen here. I've gone through every frame and it's very consistent. I think this is the real deal. Those in the comment section have said that these objects are well known to those who study mysterious flying aircrafts, saying that the disc is one of the most commonly cited aircrafts. Although these things have been studied for decades, theorists are no closer to understanding what they are. There's some who think they're drones, noting that the speeds and Gs they hit are far too high to have anything biological inside, saying that these things can hit hundreds of Gs and travel at tens of thousands of miles per hour. Interestingly, in recent years, military officials have come forward and backed up these statements, saying that they've tracked them and are still inferior to them. Other theorists who have spent years trying to get to the bottom of what these things are have speculated that they could be coming from an outside source, noting that time and time again these things have been seen on the International Space Station cameras. Even NASA has admitted that something is going on. And after talking to military officials, they're going to take these sightings seriously, noting that they will be investigating these objects themselves, saying that they have the best scientists on board, and hope to come to a definitive answer for what these things are. Skeptics have said that these objects are not of interest, and that all of these sightings can be explained using everyday things such as balloons, a natural weather phenomena. As some military pilots have pointed out though, a balloon can't fly tens of thousands of miles per hour, evade on most sophisticated jets, hit GS that would destroy any human along with the craft itself, and also do a 10,000-foot vertical takeoff within a second. Another person told me their story about how they saw something while on a plane. They said the following: "I've seen these objects before and I couldn't make sense of what they were. During my encounter, I saw 4 of them, and each one was similar distance from the other. They were holding a tight formation and were in the shape of a triangle, but from my point of view, they looked like individual crafts rather than being part of one craft. If I had to guess, I would say that the objects were around 30 feet in length, and each of them didn't appear to have anything on them. I couldn't see any insignia, nor could I make out wings or any propulsion system. The whole encounter lasted no longer than 20 seconds, but to this day I have no idea what it was that I saw. As of right now, these objects are still up for debate, but what's interesting is that more people are coming forward with their encounters, and higher officials are now acknowledging that these things exist. So what do you make of this interesting video? And what do you think these objects are?